Palestinians have been living a life of terror for 75 years, whether they live in the Gaza Strip, whether they live in what used to be known as the West Bank, which is really an area that no longer exists, and whether they live as citizens of the State of Israel in 1948 Palestine, or whether they live in refugee camps outside of Palestine. A constant life of terrorism, of being subjected to terrorism daily, day in and day out, arrested, detained, tortured, bombed, and no consequences for the side that is committing these terrible crimes. And by the way, the crime of apartheid, the crime of ethnic cleansing, and the crime of genocide are 3 crimes against humanity, and these are being perpetrated by the State of Israel, and there's no discussion about that. And that is a problem. That is a serious problem. Now, one of the reasons for this happens to be, I believe, that there has never been a real concerted effort to present the Palestinian story in a well-organized manner. There is no Palestinian presence in Washington, D.C. So how can we possibly look to American politicians, the press, the public, to present somewhat of an equal, some kind of a fair presentation of the reality? One side presents a very compelling, very thorough, very well-tested and well-produced narrative, and the other side is barely existing. And I think that is certainly one of the problems and one of the reasons we're seeing what we're seeing right now. Now, what happened on October the 7th? Palestinian fighters came out of the Gaza Strip, practically took over half of historic Palestine. The entire southern part of the country was taken by Palestinians. Over 22 Israeli settlements, towns, villages, kibbutzim were taken by the Palestinian fighters. The Israeli military was nowhere to be seen. The very sense of security that Israelis always thought they had failed, was not there. It took days upon days upon days before there was a sense of some kind of action by the Israeli army, by the Israeli government. They talk about hundreds of Israelis who were being killed, or maybe over 1,000 Israelis that were killed by the Palestinian fighters. And as the days and the weeks go by, we see more and more evidence, more and more witnesses coming out, saying that actually many of the Israelis were killed by Israeli fire. There was an Israeli witness, that saw the shelling of a house full of hostages by Israeli tanks. So we don't know how many were killed by the Palestinians. We don't know if any were killed by the Palestinians. Where is that story? That should be front and center. Then what we've seen, as the days progressed, as the week progressed, a massive, savage campaign of revenge. That's what we're seeing in Gaza. We're not seeing a war. There's not a war in Gaza. There's a massive, savage assault of revenge. The Israeli government, the Israeli military have been injured. They've been insulted. They've been humiliated by a small group of fighters who came out of one of the poorest and most oppressed places on earth. And they managed to paralyze the entire state of Israel. For weeks, Israelis are still afraid to leave their homes. I'm talking about Israeli Jews. I'm not even talking about the Palestinians. Israelis feeling uncertain. And they get some sense of satisfaction as they see the body count grow and grow and grow, the count of Palestinian civilians being killed. A war against Hamas? What does that even mean? Eradicate Hamas? What does that even mean? Nobody. I don't believe that anybody thinks that these are serious arguments, that there's any kind of a strategy here moving forward. It is revenge and destruction for the sake of destruction. And the conversation needs to be, and again, this is a serious, I believe, a serious lack here of looking forward. Everywhere we go, the protests, the conversations with people who actually care about what is happening to Palestinians is about ceasefire. Ceasefire, that's it. We've grown accustomed to demand so little for Palestinians, and Palestinians have been accustomed to expect so little, that ceasefire is it. What is ceasefire going to do? A few days of reprieve, a few days of humanitarian aid, and then Israel will violate the ceasefire like it always does. And then what?